This is an excerpt from The Sound of the Genuine by Reverend Howard Thurman. There is something in you that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. And sometimes there's so much traffic going on in your minds, so many different kinds of signals, so many vast impulses floating through your organism that go back thousands of generations, long before you were even a thought in the mind of creation. And you were buffeted by these. In the midst of all of this, you have got to find out what your name is. Who are you? How does the sound of the genuine come through you? The sound of the genuine is flowing through you. There's something in you that waits and listens to the sound of the genuine in other people. And if you can't hear it, then you are reduced by that much. If you were to ask, what is the thing that you desire most in life this morning, you would say a lot of things off the top of your head, most of which you may not believe, but you would think that you were saying the things that I thought you ought to think that you should say. But I think that if you were stripped of whatever there is in you that is literal and irreducible and tried to answer that question, the question may be something, the answer may be something like this. I want to feel that I am thoroughly and completely understood so that now and then I can take my guard down and look around me and not feel that I will be destroyed with my defenses down. I want to feel completely vulnerable, completely naked, completely exposed, and absolutely secure. Now, if I hear the genuine in me, and you hear the sound of the genuine in you, it is possible then for me to go down in me and come up in you, so that when I look at myself through your eyes, having made that pilgrimage, I see in me what you see in me. And the wall that separates us and divides will disappear, and we will become one, because the sound of the genuine makes the same music. Last night, the moon peeked out behind the clouds, and for the first time this week, it looked more white than red. And I hadn't realized I was so anxiously anticipating this shift back to normalcy until I saw it and breathed a big sigh. Lately, we have been offered a mere glimpse of the wildfires impacting so many right now. This week, the smoke hazed the sky and seemed to stain the moon orange. It left an uneasy smell in the air that I still smelled on my way into church this morning. In moments like these, when the physical world around us is an unavoidable reminder of pain and vulnerability, I notice myself wanting to disconnect from that reminder. And what I find then more painfully still is that to do so, I'm disconnecting from that vulnerable, genuine part of me. In these moments, I'm left wondering, how do I sit and listen to the genuine of myself when I'm resisting listening to the genuine of the world that surrounds me? How can I listen to the heart of it all and not be utterly overwhelmed by the pain of it all? 2 summers ago, as I began my training as a hospital chaplain, I fell into the spiritual practice of running in the woods. And unfortunately, I mean that quite literally. I fell, I tripped, I bumped, I ran into, you name it. The woods have witnessed me at my clumsiest moments. And since beginning this practice over the years, it's become more and more important to my spiritual life. As Mary Oliver says, when I am among the trees, they give off such hints of gladness. I would almost say that they save me, and daily. I'm so distant from the hope of myself, in which I have goodness and discernment, and never hurry through the world, but walk slowly and bow often. Around me, the trees stir in their leaves and call out, "Stay a while." And light flows from their branches, and they call again, "It's simple," they say. And you too have come into the world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light and to shine. This is what I want to connect with when I'm surrounded by trees. I want to be filled with ease and see the light that flows from their branches and feel hopeful for the world and for myself. It's a joyful place for listening, hearing the birds, the crunch of dirt underfoot, a place to listen more deeply to myself and hear that sound of the genuine flowing within and throughout. But this week, when I ventured under the trees, there was something else waiting. I first noticed it as I breached the top of the trees and scurried up a rock. Turning around, I was faced with this breathtaking, eerie, golden haze sitting over the trees on the horizon. I sat and listened to it in awe, not realizing then exactly what I was looking at. But as I listened, I heard, and what I heard was painful to hear. It's not always something I hear when I listen to the world. I can't always hear wildfires, or the drilling of oil, or the pesticides seeping into the grass across the sidewalk. But in this moment, I was coerced, yanked into awareness, and it felt numbing. I was listening, but I wasn't connecting. I wasn't in touch with the genuine, not inside myself at least. In fact, I could almost feel a shell creeping over me, surrounding me. Perhaps it was time to get going. But there was something that I heard that kept me there, and I wanted to know what it was. Perhaps heard isn't the right word. Something I felt. Something I felt flowing through me that carried strength. But I was stuck in this in-between, not able to name what I was feeling, not able to leave it behind. I didn't want to leave it behind because I felt like this was my way of reconnecting, my way of not going numb in that moment. So I did what I often do when I'm stuck. I put on a podcast. And this time I tried a new one that I just learned about called We Are the Great Turning. As I flipped through the episodes, I saw one titled, There Is No Future If We Go Numb. Pretty on point. In fact, as I listened, I found it was almost too on the nose. In this episode, environmental activist and Buddhist Joanna Macy and co-host Jess Saranti began by talking about the power of connecting with pain. Macy says, "There is no future if we go numb. We will be more dangerous to the world." She talks about how we can use the energy that comes from facing pain, especially the anger. And as she said this, I felt the shell around me falter and crack open a bit because I was angry. And with Joanna Macy in my ear, I was reminded that this anger is life-giving energy when we give it space to breathe and transform. Because honoring our pain doesn't need to mean feeling powerless to an overwhelming emotion. And the alternative doesn't always have to be numbing. But we can't do this if we hold it in. We have to name it, and when we name it, that's what gives it a chance to transform. Macy even goes further to say that anger should be considered a renewable resource. With rage in her voice, she says, "Take some of my anger. I have more than enough, and I have a lot more to come. Take it and do something with it. Let it ignite you." Anger is a renewable resource if we can manage it as fuel. But honestly, that's where I get a little stuck again, because I find it empowering, but also I am intimidated by anger. In fact, I suppose I find a bunch of strong emotions pretty intimidating, though less so when I hold them with someone else. In chaplaincy, we talk about use of self, which includes asking ourselves how to use the feelings and thoughts that arise within me when I'm listening to someone. How do I use that personal experience and let it inform my understanding of the other person's experience? That's a little abstract, so here's an example that is honestly an amalgamation of many moments of deep listening over the last couple of years. But let's say I'm sitting with someone at the hospital, and I notice while they're talking, a deep feeling of sadness arises within me. And I'm looking at this other person, and they don't look particularly sad. In fact, they're pretty upbeat about how their day is going, maybe. And I check in with myself. Was I sad before this visit? Is this something that I'm bringing into the room? I don't think so. So I offer it. I don't know if this feels true to you, but is there sadness here? And sometimes there isn't, and we move on. But the most common response is, yeah, actually there is. And somehow just naming it creates the space for it. And once there's space for it, we're holding it together. Nobody is alone in the sadness, including me as the caregiver. If I didn't make space for it by simply offering it back, I risk taking it with me, and then at the end of the day, I wonder why I feel bummed out or extra tired. I also risk allowing the wall between me and the other person to stay solid. I risk not listening to the genuine in them when I don't try to understand them. And I tell you all of that because as I sat on the rock in the woods, looking out on that hazy, eerie horizon, and my numbness cracked open, and my genuine connected to the genuine in the world around me, and I felt pain and anger. I could sense myself moving into that place of exasperation and powerlessness and guilt, and that ignited anger really quickly began to fizzle. And then I wondered if I could keep listening. I wondered if I could stay connected to the genuine in the world a little longer. I wondered if I could use that anger and pain and powerlessness to remember that it's not just my anger and pain and powerlessness. It's a pain that is felt deeply in this world. It's a pain that's felt differently, shaped by how we're socialized through gender, race, social class, environment. This whole reflection came from my witnessing smoke transported from devastating and life-altering wildfires hundreds of miles away. The pain being carried within that hazy horizon is a different pain than my own. And that's why I need to learn to stay with it. To remember that when we can name it and connect with it, we are not only holding the pain of others, we are glimpsing the spark that time and time again has ignited real change. We are glimpsing hope. All the beings that make up the world around us want us to hear the sound of the genuine in them. And we want them to hear the sound of the genuine in us. And when we do, the wall that separates and divides will disappear, and we will become one, because the sound of the genuine makes the same music. Amen.